Hello and welcome to episode 2 of A Humanistic Perspective. We are very happy to be joining you today and can't wait to get into our episode here, which is called The Devastating State of the Collegiate System. I am happy to be joined here today with...
I'm Lily.
And...
Ethan.
And if you want to go back and check out episode 1, you're going to hear a little bit about us. And I'm thinking here in the next coming weeks, we'll do feature episodes where we talk in long form. But just a quick introduction about a little bit about what our show is. If you're new to our show, this is a unique outlet for us to sort of express and create a pretty open dialogue and perspective on being born in Gen Z, which is pretty cool. So everything in our show is all about trying new coffees and teas and sharing our lifestyle, thoughts, highlights, interviews, and news that's happening in this crazy world of ours. So we're very happy to have a exciting episode for you. Here we go. So today, let me give you a little brief here. We're going to be hitting for our coffee, another Big Shoulder coffee today. We are doing their Colombian roast. So Ethan, do you want to go ahead and actually pour us a cup here?
Sure.
Yeah, great. Also today, we'll be discussing over our long form, our topic of today is going to be the nature of the collegiate system as of 2021. What's going on, what needs to be changed, and sort of where it's at, the history of how we've gotten to where it is, and we're really excited to bring you that episode. Again, here, this is where I would normally plug a sponsor for the show, but we don't seem to have one yet. So if you're hearing this and you'd love to reach out and be a sponsor for our show, our email is ahumanisticperspectivepodcast@gmail.com, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get into this morning episode here. So I see, Ethan, you already took a sip there of our coffee. How are you feeling about it?
I've had a slow morning, slow start.
Yeah, tell me about your day. What's going on here? How's your week? What's been the business of your focus this week? Which one of your businesses would you say you've been working on?
What day is it today? Wednesday?
Yeah, today's Wednesday, so you've had 3 days into the week.
It's been a big week for Silver Wings, just because I have a lot I'm trying to get done with an expansion going on for next month. So I've been very, very, very busy with that, and then I just got a lot going on in my mind with that, so it keeps me running up late at night, but yeah, I'd say primarily Silver Wings. Just been working on some stuff with an expansion. We're adding a few more vehicles, and we're adding some new roles within the company. So just trying to get all that organized.
Nice. I'm curious to find out, and it might help for listeners. What has been, would you say, the biggest challenge you've been faced in the recent coming weeks, and the biggest relief or success point that you've reached in these last 2 or 3 weeks with dealing with all this?
I would say the biggest challenge for me would be making sure that I'm on top and balancing all my different companies and all the different motions that are going on within each company.
Yeah.
So making sure I'm putting adequate time into each to make sure that I'm going on the process that I have for the growth of my companies for 2021. So that's probably the hardest challenge, but I think I've gotten a lot more organized, just as far as even reminders, calendar dates, and stuff like that have really helped me stay on track. I think that's been super helpful. And you said one of the
biggest reliefs or something that's been very successful recently that you're okay, I'm glad we've hit this milestone, or I'm glad we did this.
I guess I would say specific for us. I mean, we just looking at that property for our one business, that's been great. I think that's
Can you share a little bit of details on maybe what we're looking to do?
Yeah, so we're looking right now. We're looking at this property about 5 miles from Yorkville in a small town, and it's about a 10,000 square foot building. Half is about 8,000 square feet is just storage space and stuff like that for our trucks to do maintenance, to do wholesaling out of their mechanic shop. And then we have about 4,000 square feet of office space that we're going to kind of divide up to have a multi-workspace between my companies. Yep. And we'll actually be building a new podcast studio in there. So it'll be exciting once we get all moved in there. So that's something really to look forward to. I think overall, though, I think the biggest accomplishment right now would be we just got another vehicle up and running, got the drivers going, and everything's been really good. And then Jake, our best friend,
in the state is the new vehicle fleet?
We just added another vehicle down in Peoria. So we're doing a a pretty good dominance down in Peoria, and I think we'll make a good presence down there. And we're hoping to partner with hospitals, OSF, and stuff like that down there. So that's kind of our primary location we're trying to really expand this year and take over. And then we'll go into a few other areas throughout Illinois. But my greatest thing I would say so far this year is allowing Jake, one of our good friends, to kind of grow in his role. And it's super cool to see how guiding someone and when they're able to learn in a certain industry, they can grow so well. And it's just you gotta learn how to present it to a certain type of person the right way, just so they can understand it, because not everyone learns the same.
No, totally agreed. Totally agreed. I wanted to go back and touch the coffee here real quickly before, Lil, I ask you about your week. Again, like I said, we're drinking a Colombian. That is the name of their roast. It's one of their house roasts, and it's just a mild medium blend, a medium dark blend, I would say. And they say here on it,
I like this
balanced,
coffee much better.
sweetly nut toned.
So
Make it solid. Go to everyday cup of coffee. Go to everyday cup of coffee.
Yeah, like I would say this is a perfect coffee for me. Way better.
Yeah.
Like I
What-
don't mind drinking.
Much more than yesterday's.
sorry, was yesterday's light roast?
No, yeah. Monday for our episode, we
Oh,
actually
Monday.
had, I believe it was their Bold Slugger roast.
Okay, was that light or dark or medium?
It was a medium
Okay.
roast as well.
So okay,
Both have been pretty traditional house blend, middle of the road brews. But yeah, I would agree. I taste that nutty aspect of this coffee, and it's just really solid. It's not offensive at all. It sits on the tongue really nicely. Hits the front of my palate more than the back of my palate. Some of the coffees like linger like sludgy. I feel like specifically American Airlines, when I fly with them, when I drink their coffee, it's so just like airline quick coffee that it just sits at the back of my tongue, and I can feel it mostly there. But this one's really mild, light on the front of the tongue, solid roast. So Lil, I wanted to before we get into our episode here, let's catch up with you. What's going on with your week?
so I start my Wabansi classes next week on the 19th on Tuesday. I'm super excited for those. I'm gonna really get into the bulk of my business classes, so then I can graduate in the fall. I'm super excited about that. And I started my CSC classes like 2 weeks ago now. This is my second week. It's all my cannabis classes. So I'm taking currently history and dispensary operations, which is really interesting. The cannabis history is insane. We'll definitely have to have a podcast about that.
Yeah, I would really like to. Maybe we could even do one of our Friday features with your professor.
Mm-hmm.
That might be an interesting.
And where's that school based out of? Ohio, correct?
Yeah, it's in Cleveland, Ohio, and Columbus.
Columbus.
LOL.
No, totally okay. Yeah, I believe Ethan, they started and headquartered in Columbus,
Okay.
then created a Cleveland location, or it might be vice versa.
Are the law like
It
why
was
why would they?
Cleveland first.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Are the laws just like why would it, is there a reason why the school was started there, or kind of just where the founders are from?
Yeah, that's a good question. Lil.
Actually, I don't remember that part of it specifically of like what laws were created, but I know that they are getting the paperwork in to have their school accredited. And they're almost there. They put the paperwork in. They're just waiting on a response from. But since
So what is accredited? I mean, I guess
So
in far
an
as
accredited
schools.
this is good because we're talking about college today. An accredited institution is here. Let's look it up formally, but it's basically a formal process that validates, or from a government or like a federal perspective, to get loans, funding, and this sort of thing. It shows it's like a status, almost like when we talk about a LLC or a 501c3. You know.
I get what you're
but
saying.
it's difficult for them to get that because cannabis is not federally legalized yet. So that's why it's taking them a little bit to get it, but they signed the paperwork, they put it in, so hopefully they'll get a response soon.
Yeah, it's an official authorization process, and the general definition of accredited is to be officially authorized or approved. And so the U.S. sort of sets standards for that, as well as states do too, I think.
And how do they update those standards every year?
There's hefty boards and tons of people that are on that. But again, we'll get into this whole, I don't know how it is with your school or what they're going through, but we'll get into the collegiate system and sort of the processes and systematic system that's in place, pretty much, that has created corruption, and the people that are in charge are sort of, they have a lot of control.
Are
So-
the laws stricter in Ohio for cannabis or consuming it compared
yes.
to
Okay,
Illinois?
so
Compared to Illinois, yeah.
let's just say in Ohio, you can't combust cannabis. You have to
It's
eat
medical there.
it. Yes.
It's
You
medical.
can vaporize it, or you can use wax in a vaporizer, but you cannot combust.
I had a friend when I was attending university in Ohio. He was going to school at CSC as well. Originally started at my institution and then transferred and moved on. But he had to go when he was getting his medical card. His parents were in the medical field in Ohio, and still I think, even had to go out to Michigan to get approved and to go through it all. And at first, I believe the only dispensary that he could go to was actually right across the state lines.
Wow.
And now there's finally, I believe, a couple medical in Cleveland. I know there's one of medicinal dispensaries.
There's tons everywhere now.
Yeah, so it's quickly gaining attraction there, but it's I hope it will come. I hope they'll get full legalization at some point there.
So I'm just starting those classes, and I'm also getting together all of my information for Just Baking Goods. I'm hoping to start a subscription monthly based type of thing where I have one baked good a month, and then maybe something for birthdays, but we'll see. I'm still putting all that information together. Hopefully I'll have it all out by Valentine's Day so I can do a Valentine's Day sale. And the last thing is pretty much just getting my cannabis business information together and just some information together on the crops I'm going to be growing for this next year. I'm hoping to do a bunch of tomatoes and basil and peppers and all that sorts of stuff, and definitely start berries too.
No, it's awesome. We're still reaping the rewards of our last season. We made tons of sauces, and we made salsa. We made pasta sauce.
We had so many tomatoes, we couldn't even keep up with them.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I got a lot going on today, so that's for sure.
It's gonna be a busy day. So why don't we jump on in and get into the bulk of this episode? So this is episode 2, the devastating state of the collegiate system. So I want to give a little background and break down this episode with the history and how we've gotten to where we've gotten. So if we go back here and we look, colleges sort of, Harvard was the first institution to develop really in the United States. And it was an all-boys school at the beginning of its time. And this is back in, I believe, 1930s, even before that, way before that. And after that, we sort of see the next big transition for colleges in 1944 with the passing of the GI Bill. Which after war, all these veterans were coming back now, and they need, they're displaced. They need places to go. They need things to do, and so the GI Bill gets passed, and it made colleges huge. It afforded new opportunities, not necessarily for everyone yet, but new opportunities for just a working class, and specifically men at this point in time. Then we move forward into like 1957, and what's happening at this point in time? That's when Russia releases Sputnik, which is their space program, and it's the first thing that they launch into space, which is a really exciting, pivotal moment. But at the same time, we're butting heads and paired up directly with them here in the United States. It's a battle for science and mathematics. So what happens? The United States government uses effective marketing and starts proposing all of these strategies to try and get studies in math and science to be important and to be vital for the institution and for saving our country and democracy, which was quite exciting. So then we move forward and we get to 1960s, right? And we have the civil rights movement, which was huge and a vital step in both women and minorities getting their chance and their opportunities to attend colleges now, and the expansion of more institutions opening up and giving new opportunities. Then we move on to 1977. This is when shit starts to hit the fan systematically from a financial perspective. So what's happening here? 1977 hits and the taxpayers revolt. There was a taxpayer revolt at the time, which meant that loans were becoming huge, right? There was a taxpayer revolt and a systematic change, and it started to bring loans on. And so at this point, college was now open and something that everyone was going to do, but they were doing it off loans, right? The marketing, the idea behind school was let's go get a loan and get it. And at this time, I believe you can get a loan for college. The entire thing from start to end would have been like $750.
It was so cheap back then. I remember my parents saying
$750. That's the cost for your books for one semester.
One semester now. So let me keep going here. 1983, we start to get the inception of, data, marketing, and communication from 1983 through the 2000s. And really what happens is institutions started to grow. Their trust funds started to grow. Their endowments started to grow. Everything started to flourish.
Do we know class sizes back then?
I don't. We can go look at some statistics for that. But so basically, right, all these institutions say, oh, we're grandeur. In order to bring the best talent, we need to build big buildings and spend a lot of money, hire the best staff, and do all this stuff. So what did they do at this time? They do all that, and through the 1980s and 2000s, they build these elaborate campuses and these elaborate images of what they are. And at the same time, states and the senates and everything starts to shift, and they're moving towards giving less funding to colleges. So who is getting the burden of that? Well, they put it on the tuition. They put it on revenue and tuitions. So most institutions right now are surviving solely on two things. One, their endowments, the money they have saved, investments, things like that nature. And then the second is tuition enrollment and other revenues, right? And that.
Right.
And we've gotten to a point now where the cost of college has gotten so high comparative to the income that is being earned per household, per earners, that I think we're seeing the beginning and the change of what college will be. But let's get into this and talk a little bit. And I want to hear some of your guys' perspectives and thoughts on sort of maybe the history of that, and then we'll talk more structurally on what's going on today.
So I have more knowledge on the finances for this today. Ethan, do you have any more insight on the history of colleges?
What do you guys think
or
about that? Like, what do you think about what I had to share there with the insight of it? It's pretty interesting, I think, to see how government and the fundamental institutions sort of played a large role in how this changed and shift over time.
What's funny to me is the fact that colleges cost so much, and I feel like it's not worth it. When you come out the other side and you have all that debt and you have to pay it back, and say you get a teaching job at $30K a year, and then you have to pay about $100K in debt over how many years? Usually it takes teachers about 30 years to pay that back, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter if they're lucky, but it really takes a long time.
Yeah, and I think what we're talking about here is the non-economic understanding of an 18-year-old, right? What we do is we tell all of these kids at a young age to take on all this assumed debt at probably a minimum of $25K a year for 4 years. And then at the end of it, they expect to come out and it's just going to be in their hands. It's interesting. It's almost as if today's society, we have shifted and we sort of look at college as an insurance policy. I think families have taught kids and like that whole idea of, oh, you need to go to college because it's the only fundamental path. It's the only way that's going to make you successful. It's like this fake insurance policy. It's almost this reassurance in nothing, really, if you think about it. Because if that kid isn't determined, doesn't understand what they want to do, and they're questioning why they're even there, are they really getting anything beneficial out of that?
So here's a little bit more statistics and go on background knowledge coming from the nces.ed.gov. And statistics-wise, there's literally numbers of enrollment in institutions of higher education by sex, attendance, status, and type and control of institution. From 1869 to the 70s, the total enrollment was 63 people. There was 49 males and 13 females.
Can we just say something about that really quick? Because that's huge. That says so much. Even in the 1970s, women were just coming into education because we are not seen as women that they shouldn't be in education. They shouldn't be in jobs. They should be housewives. So I think it's interesting that even about like 50 years ago, we still have women just getting into the education system. Just a side note.
And when you can see a let's jump forward to the 1945 through the 46, there was only 1,600 people enrolled in there, 928 men and 749 women. The how many 4-year colleges? Wow, 15. It's crazy.
So let's talk a little bit here about, do you think there's still value? Is there value in going to college? Is it worth it? What do you think?
I think
because you haven't gone to college.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, just a little bit of background. I stopped going to school sophomore year. I did finished my first full last year. When I was in school, I mean, I still had phones. I was running my businesses completely while I was in school. Going through the Yorkville education system, I think there were great fundamentals I learned, and I think the community I was involved in was very active and interactive, so you could grow far more than just learning the fundamentals or actual Common Core
So you would
education
say
system.
potentially hands-on learning.
Right. So there was more that it allowed me to develop as a person and gain more than just what I'm learning at a typical school. And I think a lot of school systems are not growing up like you are in Yorkville. That was just different in the kind of community we live in. My junior year, I started only doing 2 classes. We worked it out with the school. I was only coming into school part-time for 2 classes, but my businesses, I couldn't even do that. It was interrupting my day. I was going to school from like 9 to 11, and that just didn't work for me. I think in regards to school, my whole take on it is I think there's great fundamentals that you should learn throughout that. But I think in general, a lot of people, when they're going to college, they don't even really know what they're wanting to do. And I think if you don't know what you're wanting to do and you're still deciding to go to college, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah. And do you think the price of college right now is worth it? Do you think the price is equivalent to the value of the investment?
This is if you're going to college, you're going into college because you're actively saying, I'm not willing to go out in the world and learn this stuff on my own.
Or the field or position I want.
Right, sure. I think it's also comes down to your field or position, okay? If you're going in for a medical career or anything like a lawyer, doctor, absolutely that's needed. Sure, I'm not going to oppose that. I'm also not saying there's not great things you could learn from going to college to go get your MBA or stuff like that. But my point is you can learn just as much of that outside of school. Yeah. For the person that's not going to go out and take their own initiative to learn that stuff, then you need to go to college. But I also think a lot of the times when you see these guys come out with their degrees of college, they think real business runs on how they learned the books in the school, and that's just not the case.
Not at all. I see this way too much, and I'm hearing it way too much from my peers, is our experiences with the internships we're being offered are pretty much just non-existent. They're not vital to growing you or action steps to take to making, practical experience. They don't have enough practical experience. They have a title or a role.
Yeah, I don't think when I'm looking at internships, I see all these kids like partnering with these local business chambers or stuff like that that's so small, and you're an assistant of something. You're not learning or developing roles. It's just titles, okay? So for me, when I look, I've hired people in my businesses that have had doctorates, right, to help start my business. Then you can see there's totally different things, but when you're hiring someone as a company, like what I look for now is you're experiencing your real knowledge. I don't care about what's on your certificate.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So much nowadays, it's just like when you grew up, when people used to grow up, even just finishing high school was awesome, right? Now it's become a common thing where you have to even just get through college to be normal. And unless you're going on to go get your doctorate or pursue anything higher than that, companies don't value your certificate as anything nowadays. No. It's just an inflation price increase, really.
Well, really, I think what a lot of companies do and have gotten into, and I don't think it's effective anymore, is they just use it as a placeholder for someone that I can take out of the first resume pile or not, right? They have 100 copies. Anyone with a degree moves on to the next round. I'll take a look. Anyone without a degree, simply, I can remove them. So now I'm down to 50 names. I don't think that process is effective anymore. I don't think the people I'm looking for, the people who are motivated, driven, who are learners, who interpret things, who are experiencing, who are adapting, who are, just being conscious and aware and changing and growing all the time, are not the same people that I'm meeting at the college institutions or the people that I know are my peers that are graduating, right?
I think
not all the time. That's not saying all of them. There are a ton of amazing ones.
I think the main thing is even just growing up in high school, and everyone's on this path that college is the right way. I mean, counselors almost force you to think that that's the only way to go. Yeah. There's so many opportunities to make, so many people that we've even known just in our lives get these degrees, come out. Now they have $100,000 of debt, and they're going to work at PetSmart making $12 an hour.
Right. I actually have a statistic around that. All right. So this is from Insider Higher Ed, from one of their statistical analysis done. It says here, 17 million college graduates today, this was as of 2019, today have a job that does not require the degree that they got, aka 30% of the working college graduates right now. 30% of anyone who's graduated from college that is working works in a position that didn't require the degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're entering college, I think it's such a thing. It depends what kind of household you're growing up in. I mean, we should be developing our kids. It's not like families are like they feel relieved once their kids in a college and they've got all these grant, or whatever these accomplishments they've gotten to get into college. But if you're not checking in with your kid constantly, making sure they're taking all of the academic success they can get from that, if you're not going into the mindset with college, I'm going to go into this college and network with as many people as I can, learn as much as I can from the people and surrounding me, you're wasting your time, strictly.
100%.
I mean,
I did that too when I went to my university. I said the first thing I'm going to do, I will meet the president of my university. He will know who I am. I'll make sure that I do things. I want to establish my name for myself, my own presence, because you need to. You need, like, if you're not trying to take your own opportunities, what are you doing?
That's interesting because when I went to Mizzou, I would say that a lot of the kids that went there, they were going there wanting the degree that they wanted. And that was what they were going to graduate with. And for some of them, I was a little worried just because, not that they were untalented or anything like that, not at all. Just saying that to have a career in the singing industry is so very difficult. And ways that you can really succeed is through teaching with music. And if you're not teaching in music, then it's very hard to go forward, and especially in the operatic areas.
well, and that's something you need to figure out too before you go to college.
No,
Where do you
and
want to
so-
be financially set? Okay, first of all, because
I
if you're
agree.
going to school and now you're thinking, I want to go be in this degree, where do you see yourself? Now, are you
What do you wanna
planning
do?
forward?
You
okay?
need to make
You
sure
need to
you're
be-
financially set. I
Right.
agree.
If
But
you have to be making, look, when people are going to college, you need to say, okay, $40,000 pays for one person to live very minimally in a one-bedroom apartment. Okay, if you're planning as a kid to have kids, right, and if you're going to have a spouse, right, now you're looking at that. So let's say you have 2 kids. Each one of those kids, you got to plan for at least $20,000 a year. Okay, between savings and putting in forward for that kid and really developing that kid correctly.
Of course.
So if you know that job and that education system you're going into, and you're only going to be ending up making in 10 years down the road when you want to start a family, you're going to be making $60,000 a year, but your wife doesn't plan to work, you're not in a position to do that. So I think people need to look far forward into the future and what they want to do. Because, again, everyone else is then just working to loose goals. You're
Right.
just getting on to the next step. Oh, I feel completed. People don't set out far enough. You need to have goals and attainable goals to really get there. And I think a lot of people just go into it completely loosely.
Yeah. And also, a clear point here. Do you think if everyone who went to college in the major or thing that they thought they were going to do read the book and did the same thing like everyone else, they would also be successful? We would have way too many successful people in this world. Everything that's in that book is not just the end all be all. It is, like Ethan says, the practical experience and getting out in the world and actually doing it. I would argue I have learned more and attained more and gained more experience in the last semester of being home and working with our businesses than I did over the last 2 years after I learned the fundamentals. I learned the fundamentals. I got great things out of that. The only thing left at my institution that was bringing me really fruitful concepts, ideas, and conversations was the special topics courses in my major, which were really fantastic. But again, that wasn't enough to keep me there at night. I mean, I was already seeing, like, COVID hit, and this is a great transition into this part, whereas COVID hit now, and I think we're seeing the immediate diminishing return of worth for the college degree and the price versus what you actually get in the end. Because if you think about it right now that you're not behind those fancy 4 walls and you're not face-to-face with all these high-up intellects, you're not really getting that same cognitive experience of building your network or building a humanistic connection or doing any of these things behind a screen. You can do them to an extent, but I would argue that there's a missing component to that live nature that we all look for. And when we look at institutionals, or not institutionals, what am I saying? And when we look at institutions, right, they were founded on the ideas of being human-centric, right, returning to humanism and engaging in elaborate conversation and discussion to think forward and move forward. And they were about, being a place for learning, not a place for killing or not a place for losing, right? I think we've also lost track, and the institution and the system has focused so heavily on test scores and on the conventional means of what these chores that society has decided will make
Sure,
sure that
and
is
in
a
the schooling
benchmark
system,
for
we
education.
reward for like thinking even just my little thing. We reward for the dumbest things in school. I mean, if you're rewarding people not for their academic excellence or they're willing to pursue in their education higher, but we're rewarding for sports accomplishments and stuff like that, you're not showing these kids their true traits. I think when people say, "Oh, I'm good at this," they think of, "Oh, I'm good at playing football. I'm good at, singing."
The
Those
dangerous
aren't good
part
things.
of
You need to
that
get to
is
your
that
traits to
people
understand what you're good at so you can realize how you're going to excel in school. Okay? Are your traits good at networking? Are they good at connections? Are you better at
Development, raising funds.
Sure. Are you better at now you got to understand then
better
too,
at
how do you
counting? Are you
learn?
better
Are
at
you
math?
better at if
Yes.
you look at Ben Carson when I read his book, okay? He figured himself out by the time he went to college. Okay? He knew that he was best studying strictly in a book. He was failing his grades for his first semesters that I think he went to, was it Harvard or I can't remember. It was one of the top
the
Ivy
top
League schools.
institutions,
Yeah. And he was failing his grades, but he realized that he learned best from a book. So he paid. There were people that sat in the lectures
Yep.
and took notes of the whole thing, of scribe writers of exactly what the professor said. And he never showed up to a single lecture. He took those notes and read them and memorized them and learned from it. And he
'Cause he knew his
understood it.
style.
And yes, he knew his style that was best for him and be adaptive. If you're not constantly analyzing that while you're in college, I strictly feel you're there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. No, it's a breeding ground for flexibility to explore and grow who you are. And if you're not using it for that and you're using it to just sort of party, hang out,
You need
coast
to be
through
asking.
life,
Yeah, I mean, you have to be.
you need to
How many
ask
people
yourself what's
ask
going on.
questions constantly in lectures? Like,
Sure.
when you look at an interactive, I think that if I were to go to college, I would love to go to an Ivy League school. I don't think that I don't know if I'd be able to keep up with it as much, but I think an Ivy League school is very interactive. It's constantly keeping you up, right? There's people that are constantly asking questions, and you're interacting with the teacher to gain knowledge. People are so scared of asking questions. I think the people that don't
Yeah,
ask
our generation is
questions,
very
I
scared
think
of
the people
that.
that don't ask questions are the people that are fools. I mean, if you're asking questions, you're trying to better yourself. That's the point there. You're paying all that money to better your education. Ask those questions, because you're never going to be able, in this experience, to gain from these professors that are in your life right now other than that moment. The people that are surrounding you, they're not important to your large scheme of your life. Everyone's so focused on in the moment and what others are thinking of them. I mean, going into college, there's so many other things that we need to set up in the education system before going to college. Believing in yourself, understanding who you are as a person, building confidence inside yourself so you can go to excel. And those are things we strictly miss out. And I think there's so much that adds up to why people may not take the full experience of college.
Very, very well said. Lil, did you have a point you were trying to get in there?
Oh, when you were talking earlier about the kids and the different awards they can get, it really puts people into a box mindset of what they can or cannot accomplish. I don't know if you mentioned that, but
Yeah.
that's something that's really dangerous about that sort of thing. But I think there should be more prizes for academic. I agree with you on that.
I
But
think we should
another thing,
reward when you mess up.
I
when
think you
fail.
should too. I think you should reward when you ask questions and when you think outside of the box and you're not just asking what is right in front of you. You're asking more in depth and you're thinking about what you're asking. But with the sports, a lot of kids have to use sports to go to college, actually. And that is their only way that they're able to pay for it. So in that sense, there is a dependency on the sports. They need that. But I agree, it should be more on education, and
and that's the other thing.
students should have education to have that full ride to college.
If you're trying to go professional in sports, okay, you're competing against, hundreds of thousands of
Not
kids.
saying don't do it, though.
No,
Just
you
know
can-
that it's difficult and have a backup option.
Exactly. And everyone tries to focus on that one plan. And then when they see that they can't achieve that, they're down and they think their life's over.
Devastated. Right.
And
A great general calculates, assesses, and moves on, or adjusts. They do the appropriate things necessary.
it's so much easier to fall down than it is to get back up.
Sure.
And
Sure.
a lot of people just let that falling down take them over.
So I found a really interesting report by the Herringer Report, which is a nonprofit independent news source. And their study they conducted this year in 2020 alongside with NBC was really interesting, and it sort of highlighted and talked about the current financial state of colleges. And some of the key findings were, one, there's a huge decline in enrollment. When we look at from '08 through 10 and even 17 to 18 and now, huge declines in enrollment. There is weak state and government support, meaning year over year, as our states and our federal agencies are deciding, shit, we need to cut our budget. Where are we cutting it? They're seeing that, well, these institutions, they are raising prices. They're making more on tuition revenue.
And do we think
why don't we pull back?
Do we think institutions are actually there for the kids and the students?
They used to be. I think that's gotten misguided. Again, I think it's gotten misguided through benchmarks and through administrations and setting personas and images and this really litigic and bullshit-esque melodramatic style of running, administering. It's colleges are not ran by entrepreneurs. They're run by usually university intellects. A lot of provosts, deans, presidents, they come from the
do you
academia
think
world.
because there's so many restrictions, I feel like there's those professors that have taken on those careers and roles have so much to teach, but is there things that they're held back by from allowing them to completely?
100%. So let's talk about structure here, right? There's only 3 types of colleges in the United States. Public institutions. So they have they're responsible, the administration, right?
A public institution similar to us, what would that be? A public institution?
Public institution gets funding from the state and the government.
Okay.
And private investors, their board, they're private investors in that team, as well as their students and their school. That's how they get funded. So they have to not only, raise prices for the kids, but they have to kiss up to the government as a stockholder.
Are they for profit or is it
Nope,
considered?
they are public. They are considered like a nonprofit type of institution.
So what
Then
school
there's
similar
private,
to us would that be? Like closest near us? What would be a
Waubonsee Community
University
College.
of Illinois, Northern
gotcha.
Illinois
Yep,
University.
following. Yep.
Then there's private institutions. That's what I went to. Those are institutions that are for profit and are usually set up by someone else or an independent thing, and they can grow endowments and things like that. So Baldwin Wallace, a lot of D3 or smaller schools or specialty schools will set up from a private school.
I'm pretty sure.
The problem with private schools right now financially is rates are through the roof because why? They don't have funding from anything else, so they rely heavily on you.
Do you think, though, the education through a private school is much more beneficial to an education standpoint? Do you feel that your professors that you've worked with in your classes?
It depends. You need to find.
Do you think everyone has a perfect school? Do you
Is
think
that-
people pick schools that are not
Yes.
meant for them?
Yes, and I think people pick the schools that are, and I think I did. See, I
Great.
would say college is not important for everyone, and I don't think you should go if you're not ready or you don't find the institution you want. But I would say college was so vital in changing me and creating me and fostering the person that I am today, and it was super essential in me. But that's because I found the right path, the right school, and the right fit. But I went hard because our mom really set us up and made us search difficultly. Like I applied to over 20 schools. I auditioned at a shit ton of schools. Like my process was quite elaborate before I established and decided which institution I was going to end up going to, and I thank her for that. I think I'll do a whole. I want to do a whole written out thing on how I think kids should apply and pick a school. But getting back to your point here, find not the name, not the title, not the suaviness. Find what you want to do, and then find the people, find the names and professors that are at that institution that teach that. Then find that school.
Surround
and
yourself
network
with-
and surround yourself with
with
the
the people
resources
you
want
wanna be.
That's exactly what I
And
used.
I
at
mean,
Baldwin
how many
Wallace for.
people?
That's what I used my school for entirely.
I feel like there's so many these motivational speakers. These people, a lot of the people look up to these days. They say these statements, and people look at them, and it's a sense of feeling good, but they never understand truly what those statements are saying. Surround yourself with the ones you want to be, right? There's so many people that are trying to fit into a certain caliber and not surrounding themselves with the people they need to better themselves as a person. Everyone's so focused on what others are thinking of them.
Truly.
You need to be yourself. Until
Focus
you
on
can
that.
be yourself,
Yes.
you're not going to be able to get to any of your goals you want to be.
The beautiful thing about this long form is like it's so intimate in a way. I'm feeling so freed by getting to just talk like this and exploit myself in this way because I know at some point I'm going to sound stupid. And
Sure.
at some point I'm going to sound good.
Yeah,
and
and see,
something
that's
will
why
come out right.
I think there's not really I love it not being guided as much because again, we understand. We say it every time. We're learning. We're constantly learning and we're changing. This is how we're feeling right now at this day and age and this point of our life.
I don't think college will be bad forever, but I think it needs to go through a change. I want to go into that at the end, but the last type of institution, back to the financials, is nonprofit institutions entirely. So these institutions, they rely entirely usually on there's a system called the scholarship bubble, basically where they one person's tuition is paying for a student who needs scholarship to go there. And so they get stuck in all of their revenue going back into scholarships. So the nonprofits are stuck there. Private schools are stuck in putting all the costs on the students because there's not really a helper, a good structure, or entrepreneur running a lot of these types of institutions. And the
Aurora
public
University
ones are
is
losing
actually
funds.
a private institution, I
That
believe.
is another one, yeah. That's another one in our local community that's a private institution.
One of the things I think that bothers me, and I would love to touch on that more, I think one of the things for me is like, there's been people I've talked to out just within the communities, and I tell them, I was a guy that was set on seeing my brother, seeing you go to college and everything like that, and my mom was very focused on education was the right way. I think our mom was probably one of the
She
strongest
thought it was
people.
an insurance policy. You go to school, you're out of poverty. You do things different than us, right? Because I'm going to be fully transparent on our podcast. Our parents didn't go to college,
No.
right? So they just went into the workforce and they tried to figure it out. They took the practitioner route, similar to Ethan did, but they didn't establish clear and initiative goals because life and family got in the way. But that's a whole nother thing. We can go into that at a later time. But it's that idea of they didn't know. So what they thought college is an insurance policy.
And that's where I felt like I guess the thing I was most scared of was I was like, I don't want to fail. My dad didn't go to college. I don't want to be that person that's going to be the next letdown. And I think I just let that bother me and get too much inside my head. But as I grew and developed as a person, when I was in 8th grade, I was head set on going to college. I was going to go get a business degree, yada, yada. But as I was growing as an entrepreneur, the people I networked with made me smarter. I asked questions, right? I was constantly outreaching to gain and better more knowledge. Every time, people, when you learn to meet me, I'm a very talkative person. I'm always talking to people and constantly doing that. But that's because I love to be learning. I love to keep asking questions. Again, people take life as it's you got to live like you're not going to be here tomorrow, right? So if you miss those opportunities, I like to live with no regrets. Every choice I've made in my life, I've made bad decisions. I failed, but I don't have regrets because that was me. Those were my true intentions, and I learned from it. And I think that's super important for me. But just growing up through that, again, it's not, I don't know where I was going with that, but that was just important to me for me to say. I don't know.
No problem. Back to this financial thing in the report. The report had 2,662 schools in it. And of the findings, over 500 of the schools showed at least 2 warning signs of the metrics, which the metrics were enrollment, tuition revenue, public/endowment health. And those were the metrics. And of those, 500 of the schools showed warning signs in at least 2 of those areas, 2 of those 3 areas for financial disaster within the upcoming years. That doesn't mean they'll close, but that means, being red line to red line, breaking even year over year and getting into a very scary place financially.
And you have to be developing as an institution. You have to keep pumping money in to grow. You got to stay up and current.
Here's an interesting one too.
Like when you look at your school, Chad, I think I've been to Chad's school a few times now. We had some great work sessions over there and it was collaborative, but his school, they're spending money on all brand new buildings and stuff because you got to.
Yeah, we're going through, I believe, I don't want to misspeak here, but I think it's $100 million capital campaign for
his
growth.
private school, and it's not a big school. I mean, it's
No, not
the
at all.
size of my high school, but it's they have every resource there available for those students, and I think that's super important. You got to stay current. So even when these institutions are financially maybe declining, they have to find ways to keep staying current with today's
changing society. And that's too where there's been money mismanagement. This is the 2 big issues, right? College enrollment's down. Why is it down? Because 2 things. The demo is changing heavily here. Nathan Gralls, he wrote a book called Demo and the Demand for Education, for Higher Education. And in his book, he and I quote says, between the next coming years of 2025 and 2030, native-born children will decline by 650,000 from a basis of 4.5 million. Meaning there's going to be a 4% fall in the amount of kids that are even going or could be enrolled into colleges. Not to mention, most of those native-born people, the demographics on them are completely different. And all of our institutions right now, I don't think are set up in a way that are showing equitable, profitable, and valuable ways to teach minorities and certain people. Like I was so dyslexic my whole entire high school career. My younger educational career, I was an IEP student. I never got it. I never followed. I could never understand and keep up because I didn't know my learning style.
And
But
I was the
no one
same-
would have taught me that because I didn't come from a family where we had the stability to focus on my education.
And I think my biggest failure of going through the school system, just growing up all the way up until my junior year, was I was so scared of what others thought, and the things that bothered me from learning, I was too scared to tell others. I was so, I feel like the school system's so rushed. I don't think that the amount of hours, one teacher cannot develop a kid fully in an hour and a half lecture.
So
You know
it's
what I'm saying?
interesting that you're saying that, because Chad and I were actually talking a while ago on like how we could change the education system, and I think this does tie into the college and how we could see college education changing in the future is to not have the standardized testing like we have so much, is that it's
Well,
actually
I was never a good test taker. We were
No,
growing up
that's
through
the thing,
school.
too.
It was all based on your test scores and your grades. And this was the other thing. When someone ever comes up to me in public and says, when I told them I'm not going to college, and they're like, "Oh, are you crazy?" And I'm thinking, this is someone that's making $65,000 a year,
Right.
and I'm 15 years old and already making above that. You know what I'm saying?
My business is doing more. I have more collateral, more liability over my
And
head.
I'm like, how can you say that? Again, it's people are guided, and the people are so worried about what others are thinking that no one speaks up. You're just in this realm of living every day. I mean, you can even just look at the kids, bro. When I'm looking at all these kids on my that I used to go to high school with, they're crying because they're not getting attention on social media posts. Like, people need that guidance from other people and are constantly seeking what other people are telling them how to live their life. And you just keep touching on that. I mean, the education system for me, that's something that I think education is I think it's important, and I think education with my businesses and my financials later in life, that's something I'm going to highly invest in. I think it needs a complete restructure. I mean, the society and everything we're living in needs a
strip
restructure.
the way we're looking at it and go back to what are kids supposed to get out of education?
When you're going through
rethink
high
that?
school, I think you need to be developing kids to figure out where their passions lie. Where do they really want to see? Give them more hands-on
It
experience.
should
And I
be
think
earlier than that.
It should be even earlier. I agree completely. I think Yorkville is trying to be adaptive within that. When I was working with the current models with Dr. Shimp and stuff like that, and growing of where they see the future of it. But we're looking at 10 and 15-year plans. People
Right,
are
we need
waiting too
two.
long. This
We need
needs to
1 and 2.
happen now.
There's no reason why the education can't change immediately. It's just people tied up in money
it's
and
logistics, money, and powers at play, powers at hand.
I mean, things should be.
people
I think
just
schools
don't
should
like
be-
change. Change is scary. Change doesn't guarantee that everything's going to work correctly.
And I think people are like, I think if the media were to get a hold of institutions that are making sweeping new changes, no tests, maybe all the classrooms don't have desks, it's a collaborative environment,
So-
going back towards like how it was during Greek and Roman times of Socratic discussion, a school to do that, they would get media hit and it'd be like, oh, they're breaking norms and doing all this.
Sure,
thing. And I think it would
there's
get
so many things to
opposition.
focus on within. When I was growing through, like Yorkville District 115, okay, they have contracts with people to focus on how emotions make you feel in school environments. Okay,
Good.
there's so much more to just a learning environment than just the education and what the core values are, how
If
it's
there's
set
anyone
up.
that knows any educational specialists out there, if you could send us their names or send us some links, we'd love to have someone on the show to talk more in depth about
Well,
this.
I know that. I mean, the superintendent we did the lights for in Oswego. Okay, that guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
that'd be a great example.
I told
We'll
him my
bring him
life
on.
story,
We'll
and
bring
he
him on.
completely understands it. We definitely will. He needs to. There's so many good impactful
got a
things.
great
People
story.
understand. People understand and see that the education system has failed, but there's too many bad people in positions that are worried about themselves and their hierarchy that no one fixes it. I mean, people acknowledge this, but we continue every day. This needs to be larger raised issues. I mean, we need to start fixing on that stuff. I don't know, but
I think too, another thing that we're seeing is colleges have, if you look at financials and you go back, there's data to show that colleges are starting to seek profit. Really, they're trying to grow in a way, because as those state funding started to go down, what happened? They started to cut costs, but also they started to raise the price of tuition. So what are they doing? They're keeping more
Yeah,
revenue.
that's
They're
kind of
they're gaining
ridiculous.
profit at that point. So it's really interesting to see where that's at, and how could it change? How could we make these changes going forward? Some people have proposed, and some options that I've heard talked about are, one, income sharing kind of. So where you have an investment or someone who is assigned to you, like a big brother, big sister program, and you say, all right, I would say, Lillian, I'm going to pay $100,000 for you to attend a 4-year institution. Upon completion, of you getting a job. I will have a share of your salary of a certain percentage for a certain amount of years, and we'll call that back the rebuttal payment. There's formats of this, I think, where people would pay less than what the actual person invested back. There's formats of it where they pay a lower interest and pay it all back. That's an interesting option that I've heard people proposing. I've also heard the talk of free college and free institutions. I've heard some people say it's bad. I've heard others say it's really good. And then another one is better or restructuring our tax strategies in the United States for colleges.
I think there's too many. I think you've said 6 things there that all need restructuring. I don't think there's one right answer there.
And I also think sugar from all the
I also think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, let's make the government do that or do this for free. Stuff doesn't come for free. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that.
That's the one that scares me is if we say college is free, where's the bill going?
People constantly think, like, everyone thinks that everything should be given to them. Like, I started out with nothing. My family has had no money. I mean, I started my business from just one lawnmower we had in our garage, and I built it up from there to buying trucks and additional assets and stuff like that. I mean, no one is responsible for your actions. You are your own person. You are your own life. You need to go out there and guide yourself. Your life is completely in your own hands. Stop making, like, so many people are like, like even people with like, oh, where's my government money? Like, don't rely on that stuff. You need to go out there and work for yourself in this world. Nothing should be handed to you. And everyone thinks there's so many people growing up through kids, even their parents just handing them stuff constantly, or, oh yeah, you can do this, do that. Parents need to be structuring their kids like, hey, this is your kids need to start working on budgets. Everything gets handed to them. And then kids, when they're like, oh, you grow up through that college system, now you're like, oh, not everything is handed to me. Then they freak out and they don't know how to develop or handle life.
Yeah. Let's talk real quickly about the future for a second. I'm very excited because of the time we're in. There's instrumental change, I think, that could happen or that is going to happen in education. And here's a couple things that are really, really exciting. I think based on that history, right, when Sputnik was happening and all of that with Russia, innovation was based on world dominance. I think we're going to see a lot of that come in hand here with the war, not the war, but the intellectual battle for dominance between China and the United States and other major countries. See, the key to growth at this current state, and exponential growth for that matter, is science, technology, mathematics, and things of that nature. And the demographics in the United States is going down. Our generation and generations after us are waiting to have kids. So therefore, we're seeing a complete shift in the talent pool in Generation Alpha. What's Generation Alpha, you ask? That's all the kids that are born after 2010. They are now 10 years old. They are the first generation entirely born in the 21st century. Generation Z had some kids that were in the 90s. They are the first entirely technology from the binky pacifier to growth tech generation. And we're living in a live incubator and experiment of adapting and changing a system that benefits and helps all of them and creates a world that is more connected and more back to that central topic of humanistic interpretation and humanistic connection, really. And with the talent pool shifting, that means the U.S. is going to have to be, competitive with other countries, right? We're going to need to pull more people. We're going to need more migration if we're not producing more people here to keep up if we want our nation and our innovation to keep growing along with the other countries. Job demand and the average lifespan are as well going to go up. And colleges are going to be vulnerable entirely by the age, the future, and that I guarantee there's going to be a shift in people going to a school and then being like, all right, I have all these traits. Let me find something, to being like, no, if you go to an institution, you go to a trade and you learn a specific skill. And instead of working on a whole company and just doing that one skill, you work on new projects all the time with different teams of different people with certain skills.
And that's not going to happen until we start with the lower education levels of figuring out where you want to develop as a person. You need to figure that out. And people are like, oh, well, kids are too young. They can't figure that out. I mean, I don't agree with that either. I think you're not developing your kids right along the way if a kid can't figure that out.
If people aren't worrying about college enough, I think they're really missing the key here, because the next geopolitical sphere that's going to be pushing us into the late 20s is going to be around education and around national growth, intellectual and dominance in tech and innovation.
And
So
for
if that's not
exactly.
something that we're thinking about and focusing about, and we're worrying about, all right, let's raise prices and let's make sure we're competitive and our business is focused on now and not the future, how are we going to be ready?
Again, I always say it again. A lot of businesses, structures, institutions, they act reactively, not proactively, and that's super important to realize. You have to always be acting proactively. And any of our young listeners that are listening, again, the way you've been guided is not your fault. A lot of the times, kids feel this pressure and their weight when it really comes down to the parents. Okay, your parents are the people who develop you as a kid. Me and my brother, we grew up in a household where we had to learn and adapt very fast. You know what I'm saying? Our parents made us very involved, and I think it was one of the greatest things they ever did. We learned that there was real stress in the world at a young age. We learned how to deal with problems. I mean, we went with days where our water was shut off and we didn't have stuff, and we had to figure out, what are we going to do? But we never felt guilty or sad for ourselves. We never did. We look at everything as, okay, this is a problem. Now we got to find a way to fix it. And so many kids at a young age were never dealt with that. So I think a lot of it comes down to with how you were raised, and it comes down to the parents. But you have to be able to realize that and then fix, okay, and the parents, and it's a two-way street. The parents have to help the kids, and the kids have to realize that this is both a problem and then work together. I think so many parents are out there, and they're not fit to be parents.
Yeah.
You should never have had kids.
100%.
Because
They weren't ready.
No. And when or parents will then all of a sudden start to try to act like they're going to be parents. You know what I'm saying? After neglecting kids or not paying attention to them for so many years, and then they feel like everything can be estranged and fixed right away, and it can't be. You have to go back within, again, all this stems down to, because I think the main thing is realizing that all these topics we're bringing up about college and changing, until we can fix ourselves as humans, realize our problems, none of that other stuff really matters.
Sure.
It comes down to being a human.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
And it comes down to getting people who have that humanistic aspect in these administrative and high roles.
Yes.
And building
Yes.
new structures.
And
Really.
I think we need to get all the people that are in the systems now, they're outdated. I mean, you literally, this medical company I'm working with, it's called Logisticare, formerly known as Logisticare. Now it's like Motive Care or something like that. We have these high CEOs coming out with the new rebranding videos of how they're going to be a powerful and impactful company and acting like they care about their patients. And
But
when
are
you
they
look
doing
at their
it in real
bottom
life,
level,
or is that just in a video?
Right, it's just in a video. We need to, I mean, that's politics. We can't have these. There needs to be age limits and restrictions on this stuff. There needs to be office changing. We need to have people that are constantly changing out. It's just like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We have all these old peoples in these high positions, and they're not adapting. And those are the people that are really holding us back from growing. And that's where we need to acknowledge
someone
first.
who would want to adapt or change comes in, they go, no. You
No, that's
haven't
not
been here
works.
long enough. You don't understand. It's going to be this way. Okay, because when you got here, someone did that to you, and they suppressed you to make you feel that way, and now you've been through the system, so you get it.
And so
You
many
just get
people
it.
take criticism.
Right.
So many people feel criticized when someone brings up a point. So many people are not friends because of different political views. Okay, if you can't be friends with someone because they have a different political view from you, and you get mad because of that, that's just absurd. I mean, you need to literally know how to have discussions where you disagree with people, and that's one of those things where literally in this society, if you don't agree with someone,
a colonial pub where all of the founding fathers were fostering and creating all of these liberally brilliant ideas that are going to change the world and foster innovation at that time, I guarantee they were all just fucking buddying out, being open, expressing themselves, and
and that's where you got to be able to understand where other people are coming from.
yes.
You got to know, like,
Yes.
that's one of the biggest things.
They didn't love each other. They might have gotten into a bar fight because they were drunk and a little angry, but at the end of the day, they walked out of there and they all could take it and be professional and have a good time. And then at the end of the day, again, they could remove themselves and go to the pub and still enjoy it with each other.
And don't get me wrong, there's times when you can't always be that way. I think one of the biggest things I deal with personally is which I've worked on heavily, okay? Back when I first started my businesses and I would have employees when I really didn't know I was just starting out with employees, but I learned, I would be directive and think my way was the only way. And it doesn't work that way. You have to be adaptive. You have to listen to other people's feelings and emotions. And And you have to be willing to change for that. Your way is not just the one right way. Right? So like even with, and that's something I continually try to remind myself every day, is that I have to be willing to hear other people's opinions and how they feel, because everyone went through different experiences and there's a reason why they believe in what they believe right now. And if you don't hold that other person's opinion high enough and you think your opinion is better or you're better, I mean, there's a reason why and that's why everything is the way it is. I mean,
Sure.
that's just not allowed. And I think that goes along with everything, with those people in those higher college positions, right? Where
Yeah.
they think their way is just the one right way and they're not understanding that. And I think that's the biggest thing with learning and going through education is we think there's one way. Like, I think now we're trying to be more of an adaptive society of how people learn, but there's not just one way that's right. I mean, I, as a kid, had awful grades. If you look at Ben Carson, too, alone, his grades were awful as a kid. He used to be made fun of as the dummiest, and now he's the most world-renowned world surgeon. I mean, the amount of surgeries he's done, he was going to give up at a point in life. Okay, and I highly recommend reading that book. It's, what is it called? It's Think Big by Ben Carson. And that is probably the most life-changing book I've ever read that Lillian actually gave to me, so I appreciate
Yep.
that.
My mom gave that to me.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to see how college has changed, because by the time I'm done with college, I would have gone through about 4 colleges. And so I started at the University of
Share your
Missouri.
story.
Yeah, I
a
would
little
love-
bit,
I think
because
that's super
She's got a
important.
very
Yeah.
common story. I think. I think you'll find.
Like, I want to
that
know your
this
experience
happens to a lot of students. Go
with
ahead.
Mizzou, and like, how did, like, when you went to Mizzou, okay, first of all, when you first started going there, was it a thing of that was an exciting school you wanted to go to? Then I want to understand, maybe while you were going through Mizzou, what were the things that led you to knowing you needed a change? And where do you think, is there a path you may have gone down that could have led to your life going into a complete opposite way than where you're at now?
So my whole life, I felt suppressed, and the one area I stopped feeling suppressed in was music at the end of my high school career. And I was thinking, I don't know what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to help kids develop. I want to be there if something bad happens, because I had a lot of traumatic stuff happen in my childhood that teachers, you may not be able to notice, but if you are able to be open with the child, you can have that opportunity to help them. And I think that is something that's really magical about teaching. And so that was something that really pulled me into teaching. And I was thinking choir, because my choir teacher, Mr. Smith, was so amazing with all the students and really helping on just outside of school and whatnot. And so that's really what I thought I wanted to do, on top of just loving singing. And so I was like, okay, well, University of Missouri, perfect. It's got a great program for music, and my cousins are there. That's awesome, because I wanted to get as far away as I possibly could without being too far, and just having some people that I knew. And starting off there, I only did the music career because I kind of thought I couldn't do anything better for myself, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was like, that's what I can do, so that's what I started doing. And then I realized that's not what I wanted to do, and jokingly was like, what if I open a cannabis bakery? But not until it's federally legalized, and I'm like, after I retire from school. And then I started thinking, well, wait, why can't I just do that now? Like, it's an actual thing, people do it all the time. So then I actually got rid of Missouri, and I came back to Illinois and went to Waubonsee, and it's so different, especially with COVID now. I got there, so fall 2019 is when I started Missouri, and then the spring 2020 is when I went back to Waubonsee. And it started off as in person, and I just wanted to say, like, in terms of the teachers being there and the experience, the teachers at Missouri definitely tried to help. They tried different ways to help, in particularly the music area. I think they have really great teachers over there, and I would recommend it if you really think you like music and that sort of thing. But otherwise, it was, I'm thinking Waubonsee. It was nice, like the teachers helped and whatnot, but the difference there is that I feel like I was just trying to learn the material, and I don't really get anything past that. Like Chad at his school, he always talked about how his professors, he would go into really depth in conversations that went way above the conversation at hand and just really
100%.
dived into the topic to really get to know every single aspect of it.
The second I would establish and build a rapport with them from up front that I'm here to get more and engage more, that's past what the initial lecture is, a lot of them were immediately receptive. We're like, all right, whatever you got, whatever you need, let's talk. I could tell that you're going to understand and comprehend the base material. Let's move on.
I think one of the things I would like to just touch on, just based off what you were saying, and that is one of the things I noticed for college, and I may be incorrect when I say this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but when Chad went to college, my brother, his passion before he went in high school was all of his musical career. And again, I might not be saying the right terminology or whatever, but he was very invested in that. And that was my brother and what I thought. And I think it eventually, like same thing for me for swimming. When I swam, swimming was my everything. But eventually I got to a point where it started to not be fun because it felt forced. And I think when people say your passions, I also don't think you should go to your schools for your passions. I think a lot of people say go to school for your passions or follow your passions. And I think it's important to follow your passions, but I think you need to understand.
Do something that you're good at.
Well, that too, but you need to understand, how am I going to get to my passions?
Yeah.
Right? You may not be doing the things
I'm
you like
still,
right now to get to your
exactly.
passion in the end life. Like I'm setting myself up. I really think my brother right now is being very smart in this aspect because he's setting himself up financially,
What you
supportively
guys
to
don't
follow his
understand or
passions
see
later in life.
In the podcast is the planning and the immense amount of time that we spend researching, analyzing, and developing our own ideas, goals, visions, and plans. I have the next 10 to 15 years mapped out.
I have the
what
next-
it's going to look like and how it's going to get me to my eventual goal.
I
right?
have the next 15 years planned out and mapped out completely.
I
and
don't.
I think but I think you're developing
We're
there.
getting there.
No, I think you're very strong. I think Lily, I think
takes
that's
time,
mistaken.
too. Like,
Yes,
that's the
no,
thing is,
it
like,
takes time to change and
it
to
takes
really
time, but if you
document
don't
everything that you
Yes.
want and to really assess where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, then it's hard to figure that out. Like this past year has just been huge for me, and I've just figured out everything that I want to be doing. And same with you guys. I feel like you've made a lot of big milestones this past year with just figuring out exactly what you want to do and exactly
And
how
never
you're going
say
to do it.
Don't say you never have the time for it. Okay, when people
Yeah.
tell me they don't have the time for something, when I've invited people to meetings to better themselves, and they tell me they don't have the time for it, I manage 3 businesses with full operations.
Right.
Okay, and there's people that do way more than that. I'm working 18-hour days, and I still find time to read and
It's
develop
not
my
that you
faith.
don't have time. It's just that there's distractions.
Right. How many hours a day do you spend on social media, scrolling through Facebook, going on
phone is so
Snapchat?
toxic.
You know, imagine if you spend those hours and develop that time into yourself.
100%.
That's why I try to delete social media, and then I need it for my businesses, and I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, well, I just keep it. I delete all of my social media off my phone. The only thing I keep on is Snapchat, but I really don't even Snapchat anyone. I use it for promotions of my business or to show people and inspire people more than anything. And as far as Facebook, I keep it on my laptop only because it's only for business uses. I don't put it on my phone, so I'm not scrolling through there and wasting time every day.
Yeah.
I think you have to learn. People like to constantly make excuses.
I think people just need fucking discipline.
Y-
to be
yes,
quite
e-
honest.
Everyone makes too many excuses, and you need to have discipline with your mind, setting your
You
mind.
know what's funny though is I'm just starting to get more discipline in my life, and it's such a battle in my head of like, okay, I want to do this, and it's like, okay, well, actually get up and do it, but then I'm like, but I don't want to. But then,
And I think
but
you
it's
learn
not
this
only
once
that
you have
too.
little
It's
steps of success.
Yeah.
As you start to go throughout your life
Take
and
the
you see
little
these little
wins.
things of these little wins, now you start to realize, oh wow, like when you realize like when I started reading or doing these few different things that I'm like, wow, that really made myself smarter, it made me more intelligent, and it's moved me along. You see that investing in that time eventually is worth it. You're developing your time into yourself. And if it's going to take you to your 35 years old to realize that, it's still not too late.
My next
you can
step
change
is
your
just-
life. So many people give up too fast. If you're
Yeah.
50 years old, now with the medicine, you can live. I mean, we'll be living to past 100 eventually. Don't give up on your life too soon. You're living here
My
every moment.
analysis is Generation Alpha that we were just talking about. They're gonna be, I think they'll live till at least 130, easy.
yeah.
I would hope to at least by the time. I mean, and when we say this, guys, I mean that's the other thing. You don't realize if you look now, we are literally taking heads off people and putting them on a whole nother body. Do you realize how far along
Where?
technology is? No, like literally, there's been studies in multiple like inhuman.
Sure. Like live humans?
Yes. Yes.
Dang.
Like
I've seen similar studies with like there's this company out in I think it's Nevada that's doing a cryo freezing of post-mortem bodies with the anticipation that modern medicine will allow them to come back. And they were doing something there where they would just save you could pay and after you die, they'll cremate your body and save your head, that's a package, or you could save the whole thing. You could save the body and the head and they'll put you in a cryo chamber and freeze you. And the anticipation is the company you invest, you give your money, and your family pays for your spot. You can go to their facility. You can see a beautiful plaque. You can see the cryo chamber. It's not glass. You can't see through it. It's stainless steel, but it's nice, and it's almost like a plaque or a memorial. And it's also like you're investing in science in the future of potentially it could, but I've never heard of it done.
So
yeah, no,
Futurama.
Jake Dufresne, which is one of our great friends.
He should be on the show soon.
Yes.
We're getting him on. He should be here potentially for Friday's guest interview, which will be exciting.
Which will be awesome. We're going to be talking with Mario
Pelagi.
He is a very great chef. His family is very well developed
established in the Chicagoland.
His
Italian
grandmother was making
cuisine.
bourbon or rum. It was a type of alcohol in
Yeah,
the bathtub with Al Capone.
Let's not give everything away, but that's definitely a little plug there. A great little thing. Come on back this Friday.
Yeah, come
check out
back
that
and
episode.
watch Mario Pelagio. He's a wonderful chef, a wonderful cook. He's really helping me develop my skills, and just shout out to him. He's going to be awesome.
I would like to just touch on maybe one more topic with Chad.
No,
maybe
let's
understanding.
Let's keep going.
Understand.
Yeah,
I would
we're in
like
a
to
great
just.
place
Well,
right
I
now.
wanted to actually talk about what colleges now at the Corona level. So I'm at CSC. It's all
I
online.
think, all right, can I say
And
one thing really quickly before you continue? Your school is doing a much better job of handling online than I would say most major institutions who are hiring third-party companies to come in and establish online formats and systems for them.
I need you to clarify for CSC or Wabansi?
CSC.
CSC. So
And it's a younger school.
yeah,
And I think that's why, actually.
so they've adapted. They give you 48 hours after the class to watch it, and then
They just,
put
I think
your
they can
attendance
cope.
in.
And in all formats, from Zoom University to how the course is being handled to the course load to how tests handled and everything, the way that CSC is handling it is, I think, more adaptive and more successful for people's retention and ability to find themselves and find their career.
Because they know that people are busy and that they have a lot of other things going on, so they make sure that you have time to be able to look at the material. And then also they give you more materials than you'll ever need to learn everything, and they give you the ways to learn more. They don't just teach you what you need to know, but they teach you how
So
to
many people won't use the
research.
things that are around them with the answers. I have a
the
driver.
right
Literally
places to
last night.
research.
Last night we had a driver. Okay, he's taking a test. Meanwhile, he's doing this test way late at night, but he's doing this test, and he literally has a manual with all the answers that he keeps calling in questions about. He can't figure out, and it's right there in front of you. Like if people just looked around them just a little bit more and tried to use the resources that are presented to them, you could be so much more successful. And I think for me, for school wise, I was on such a different path growing up through school, and I don't know, I couldn't take my teachers seriously, if that's bad, but I still had respect for them as a teacher. But for the things they were trying to points across, and it was like, I mean, like, I don't know. For me, it just I wasn't able to really adapt and learn because the things they were teaching me were great, but I knew where my path was and where my direction was headed. And I knew what really, like, my favorite class was math and doing algebra and financing and stuff like that because I'm constantly working with numbers every day.
You're a killer with numbers. That's why I think we're a great team, but there's a lot of reasons. That's one, though.
Yeah.
You're fire with numbers.
And I think I figured that out. I think people were like, so I think I took school for everything I need to. I was not going. My classes. I mean, I don't even think I did one piece. I mean, I did very minimal homework. I don't think I've ever
How
read a
did you
book.
pass? Can you tell people the key to if you're listen, kids, if you're out there and you're not good at school, here's the key to passing. Go.
Right. I don't think I've ever had. I have had an F at a point, but one of the things.
You
But I've
networked.
never failed.
You
I got it back
networked.
up. Yeah.
You
so
got to tell them.
networked.
Tell them
So-
the secrets. Tell me that you
well, okay.
built
So starting
relationships.
through even just kindergarten. Okay. It was building relationships. I knew every classmate in my kindergarten. I knew all the teachers. I knew the principals of the school. I networked with that. I was constantly meeting. I was constantly asking questions and talking. Going through YS, I would get involved in student leadership and stuff like this, connecting with all the
Right?
different.
You hear how he's engaging and showing he's an academic learner, but he's a practitioner, right? He's in a school setting, but school isn't relying here. He's finding other resources.
I
Keep
mean,
going.
I could my teachers wouldn't. I would be able to still talk to my teachers and they all love me. I mean, whenever I had a problem, I wasn't a type of kid that would sit down. I needed to go call my mommy and for her to complain. If I had an issue with a teacher, I went straight directly to the admin. I mean, Mrs. Bargeman, she was an awesome teacher. That was in 7th grade. And I think she was my English teacher, which I did not like English as much as you could see. Obviously, I think that is the one thing I would love to have paid attention a little bit more in so I can learn, develop, and speak more proper. But I had a problem with the teacher. I went to the principal. I sat down with Mrs. Adler, and be mine. In our middle school, it's set up where it was only 7th and 8th grade. Okay, yeah. But within that, we have tons of counselors, guidance counselors. Then we have multiple principals and vice principals. Okay, I went to the highest person and complained about my problem, right? And I told her how I felt. I think that was the fastest response I ever got from a teacher, and there was never an issue again. Okay, I mean, like, it was crazy. And I think I was constantly developing, constantly networking, and everyone knew me. I had a passion, and I found what was good for me in my schools. I mean, I let a lot of things affect me in school too. All these little things that people would say, I let these control my mind and thoughts and emotions.
But you were young, and you have to experience that.
I'm still naive
before you can move on from it.
Right? Yeah. Just going through there. I mean, I was swimming in middle school. I was coming in halfway through the day because I was swimming in the morning, swimming in the afternoon, and that. I figured out what I needed to be a good student and what I needed to do to make myself better, and I made sure that happened. Those people are there for resources, but people don't reach out. And you can't so many people, when you hear no, they're done and that's it. If you allow someone to tell you no and you're going to be okay with that, but you know that that's going to better yourself, you're not being a good advocate for yourself. I don't let, the same thing.
That's good.
I don't let anyone tell me something that I know is going to be bettering myself. So if I had any issues, and again, I would go to the people that had made the decisions. Okay, I purposely did, and I would stick up for my opinion. Because again, what if I die tomorrow? What is it going to matter that I went there and spoke my opinion to that person? Right? What is it going to do?
But no, I think that's great, and really, what we're getting at here is you can take these same principles and the application that he did it at an elementary level and perform them at a collegiate level as well. You know, you can. Please, if you go to college, take advantage of all the opportunities that are presented to you. Use it as an incubator for coming up with what your passions are and then lining them up in the list of priorities of which one could be a career passion and which one should stay a hobby passion, and come to terms, come to love yourself, come to love your path, and really it will set you up for a much better future.
If you don't know what you want to do for college and you're scared to go in and waste a bunch of money, just take a year off. Only a year off, and make sure that you are looking into a bunch of different things, and make sure that you are really looking at what you want to be doing, and then also be saving money because it's going to be really expensive in the end.
You don't even need to do that too. There's leadership. There's leadership programs.
Go find an adult that you like and admire that does what you want.
For a year. Tell them,
I'll do anything for free. I'll follow you around for 3 months for free, and I want to learn everything you want. Then move on to the next one. Or
there's so many leadership camps, like even within your face, you can find stuff. There's everything you need. You can seek out, and
whether that's through the internet, through people, through whatever.
Yeah. Do not rush to go to college. Don't be influenced. You are your own person. That is your life.
It's not obscure to take a gap year. Some of my best friends that I met my freshman year of college were kids who were 23 and 24, took a break, and then came back for their undergraduate studies when they were ready.
You can realize is the things you're not good at. Like for me and my businesses, and you're going to go the entrepreneur, right? If there's things I'm not good at, I can hire people to do the things I'm not good at. And when I can recognize that, that's great. For me, there were certain things I want to learn deeper into finance.
But that doesn't mean you don't learn them enough to be able to.
So look, like even with learning programmings and doing my Excel sheets to make regular cash flow statements and stuff like that, I had no idea. I actually took Excel classes that Miss Ancient, she kind of did a little minuscule Excel classes. But instead, I knew that was something that was going to benefit me. So I didn't go to college, but instead I went and paid for a whole Excel course that was completely online that I could do at my own time pace because I knew I wouldn't be able to go to a community college, learn classes. I'd pick something that I know I could work in my schedule when I want to do it, and it can benefit me and make me grow in that role. There's so many ways to gain this knowledge without having to pay the high price.
Correct.
I mean, you can, if you're willing to seek that out, I think one of the big things is if you have a planner. Our mom was very good with planning for what we need as a kid. And like, what do you need to better yourself? With my brother particularly. And again, our parents are willing to. We could raise the subject. It wasn't like it was our parents' way or the
It was
highway.
an open household.
It was open. If we didn't agree with something, we could state that, and there could be discussion.
It was pretty non-traditional, I would say.
Yeah, it was. And I'm not saying I would say it's probably the best. I think if anyone could grow up in a household like ours, comparative to one where you're structured or you're given everything, I think we were super lucky. I think how we were raised is the reason why we're so successful.
Sure. And the reason that we keep pushing,
Yeah.
even when we aren't successful.
And we know with all the failures we've had as our family, and we've known we've gotten past those. I think we now know.
Stronger.
Yeah, it makes you stronger, and that's where they say
the same things that everyone else has been saying that's older than us for years. But
Yeah.
that's because it's just the truth.
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think for me, my closest person to me was my grandma, and she passed away in about 2018 of lung cancer, and that's what kind of got me starting my medical business.
Can I share a famous entrepreneur's quote?
Yeah.
That I have. I don't remember which entrepreneur said this, but I thought it was funny while I was doing research for our topic. A students work for the B students. C students run the businesses, and D students are the ones who are dedicating the buildings. Meaning, what it really takes to succeed in this world isn't necessarily that you could pass the material or remember everything. It was, what did you do? What steps did you take? Who did you know? And how did you push yourself? Because the D student's the one who is the contractor, who knows the deals, who's been out in the work, who maybe started with their own little house as a real estate development project and then slowly got into commercial and is now building a huge project and dedicating the building in their family's name, while the A student is the one that has to work for them.
The other thing is, too, the greatest thing about being an entrepreneur is you can grow, and you don't have to use any of your own money. Okay?
That's true. If people want to hear and learn how you can do that and get and pull off initiatives and plan out for these things, it's different for everyone. But we would love to talk and open up that conversation because it's not impossible and it's not over your head. You can think smarter, not harder, about how you finance, how you leverage.
And a lot of
how
people
you
try to
grow a
start too
project.
small. You can't, like, if my medical business, if I started just with one vehicle, that's too small. You got to understand that there's a certain level of where you have to grow, and it's never too bad just to start too small. So think big, dream big, and go for it. Whatever your faith is or your dreams are, just go for it and have no regrets. And I think college, there's lots we could touch on, but I think overall, I think if you don't know what you want to do or why you're going to college, just wait. Reach out for resources. I mean, there's people that can constantly help you, and just be an advocate for yourself.
And
What
if
are
you're
your
scared,
insights
go
on
for it.
college? We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so to close us out here, I want to say that I think college is at a critical point where it needs to take a look at its systematic place, redevelop it, redefine it, and restructure it. And I think there are some simple ways. There's 3 things that schools and administrators and government agencies can think about to change this. That's first, returning to a humanistic and civic engagement perspective, much like that of the Greek and the Roman times. 2, redefining what it is to be a scholar or a teacher, a university in general, and an admin at these institutions. Once we restructure that and we demonstrate that it's not about these rigid systems and we
call on
reevaluate
your
what that
admins,
means,
call on those big
then
people.
we'll be good. And then the last thing is connecting and engaging. If schools can get back to the crux of those things, I think we'll be in a much better place moving forward in the future for Generation Alpha and all the ones to come after them. Again, we thank you for joining us on this episode. We hope that you'll share with us in the comments and on our pages what you think. What are your thoughts on colleges, the current state? Is it valuable? Is it not valuable? Should you go? Should you take a gap year? Let us know, and we look forward to hearing from you. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Humanistic Perspective Podcast. And we look forward to showing and sharing more shows with you. And make sure to check back in this Friday when we interview with Mario Pelagi.
All right, and that's a wrap.
All right, that's a wrap.